Good morning. I am Dr. James Whitaker from American Urologist, and I want to tell you about a conversation that happens in doctors' offices across America every single day, probably thousands of times a day, that I believe is one of the most consequential and most unnecessary conversations in men's health. A man over 60 goes to his doctor. He describes symptoms: fatigue that does not respond to sleep, muscle weakness, belly fat that will not move, motivation that has gone flat, mental fog, a general sense of not being himself. His doctor orders a testosterone test. The test comes back. The doctor looks at the number. It is in the normal range, maybe the low end of normal, but technically normal. And the doctor says, "Your testosterone is fine." And then, in many cases, adds, "Some of what you are describing is just normal aging." And the man goes home with no answers, no action plan, and the quiet, demoralizing message that what he is experiencing is just what getting older looks like, and there is not much to be done. I want to spend this video unpacking everything that is wrong with that conversation. Not to create distrust of doctors. Most doctors are doing their best with the tools and the time they have. But because that conversation, repeated thousands of times a day, leaves millions of men without information they deserve to have. Information that could meaningfully change how they feel every day. Information that is not experimental or fringe. It is published in peer-reviewed journals. It is based on understood biochemistry, and the intervention I am going to describe costs about $15 a month. Let me start with the test itself. Standard testosterone blood tests measure total testosterone. As I mentioned in a previous video, total testosterone includes all forms of testosterone in your blood, both the biologically active free fraction and the biologically inactive fraction that is bound to proteins, primarily to SHBG, sex hormone binding globulin. Only the free fraction can enter cells and produce effects. When your doctor says your testosterone is normal based on a total testosterone test, what they are actually confirming is that the total amount of testosterone circulating in your blood is within a statistical range derived from population studies. They are not confirming that the biologically active portion, the free testosterone, is at a level that supports optimal function for you specifically. In men over 60, SHBG levels rise consistently with age. Multiple studies have documented this. A 40-year-old man might have SHBG levels of 30 to 40 nanomoles per liter. A 65-year-old man, even one who is healthy, active, and has otherwise normal labs, commonly has SHBG levels of 55 to 70 nanomoles per liter or higher. Higher SHBG means more testosterone gets bound, more gets locked up, and less is available as free testosterone. A man of 65 with a total testosterone of 450, solidly normal on a standard reference range, might have a free testosterone that is below the functional threshold, simply because his elevated SHBG is binding up 75% or more of his total supply. His test looks normal. His cells are not receiving normal hormonal signaling. His doctor tells him his testosterone is fine. His doctor is technically correct about total testosterone and functionally incorrect about his hormonal status. The mineral that addresses this is boron. And the reason most people have never heard of boron in the context of testosterone is simple. Boron is not a pharmaceutical. It cannot be patented. No company can make significant profit from it. So no pharmaceutical sales representative has ever walked into a doctor's office and explained the boron SHBG mechanism. It exists entirely in the research literature, which most practicing clinicians do not have time to read in the depth required to come across it. Boron is a trace mineral found in fruits, vegetables, nuts, and legumes. Its role in human health was considered minor and poorly understood until a series of studies in the 1980s and 1990s began documenting its effects on hormone metabolism. A study published in the Journal of Trace Elements in Experimental Medicine in 2011 gave healthy male volunteers 10 milligrams of boron daily for 1 week. After 1 week, free testosterone had increased by 28%. SHBG had decreased by 9%. Estradiol, estrogen in men, had decreased by 39%. In 1 week, from one mineral. The mechanism is not fully elucidated, but is thought to involve boron's role in regulating the enzymes that synthesize and degrade SHBG, and its influence on how sex hormones bind to their carrier proteins. A subsequent study at the University of Medical Sciences in Tehran, published in 2015, replicated the SHBG-reducing and free testosterone-raising effects of boron supplementation in a longer trial. The researchers concluded that boron is a significant regulator of sex hormone bioavailability and recommended its consideration in men with low free testosterone and elevated SHBG. Let me tell you about Wayne. Wayne is 62 years old, a retired commercial banker from Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. Wayne had been told by 2 different doctors in 2 different years that his testosterone was normal. His total testosterone was consistently between 380 and 420, low normal, but technically within range. Both doctors independently used the phrase normal aging when describing his symptoms. Wayne was not a man who accepted explanations he did not understand. He pushed back. He asked, "What specifically is normal about feeling like this? What specifically would be different if this were not aging?" His second doctor did not have a satisfying answer. His third doctor, an internist he found who had a particular interest in men's hormonal health, ordered a complete hormone panel that included free testosterone, SHBG, and estradiol. Wayne's free testosterone was 6.8, below the optimal range. His SHBG was 64, significantly elevated. His estradiol was 41 picograms per milliliter, high for a man, consistent with the kind of testosterone to estrogen conversion that elevated SHBG can drive. This third doctor mentioned boron, not as a prescription, not as a lecture. He simply said, "There is a trace mineral that has some research behind it for reducing SHBG. You might want to look into it." Wayne looked into it. He found the 2011 study and the Tehran study. He started 10 milligrams of boron daily, available as calcium fructoborate or sodium tetraborate in supplement form, with calcium fructoborate being the more bioavailable option. He told no one except his wife. He wanted to track his own data before drawing conclusions. At 6 weeks, he requested repeat blood work through his third doctor. His free testosterone had risen from 6.8 to 9.4. His SHBG had dropped from 64 to 51. His estradiol had dropped from 41 to 27. His total testosterone had barely changed, 431, up from 420. If his first 2 doctors had retested him and only looked at total testosterone, they would have said nothing had changed. But the number that mattered, the free testosterone, the biologically active fraction, had risen by 38%. And Wayne felt it before the numbers confirmed it. Energy at week 4, motivation at week 5. The quiet flatness that had characterized the previous 2 years beginning to lift at week 6. His wife noticed before he mentioned the blood work results. She said, "You are more like yourself." He asked when she had noticed the change. She said, "About 3 weeks ago." He filed that away as more useful data than the blood test. Let me tell you about Bruce. Bruce is 67 years old, a retired master carpenter from Salt Lake City, Utah. Bruce had a slightly different situation from Wayne. His testosterone symptoms were accompanied by a body composition change that was frustrating him significantly. He had been a physically strong and lean man his entire adult life, the kind of man who built furniture by hand and had never needed a gym because his work kept him physical. In retirement, he continued doing woodworking as a hobby, stayed active, and yet had watched himself slowly become softer, less defined, heavier through the middle despite eating carefully. His total testosterone was 402. Normal, he was told. His primary care doctor did not test SHBG. Bruce insisted on it at the 3rd appointment where he raised the issue. SHBG was 59. His doctor looked at it, acknowledged it was elevated, and then said, "Honestly, I am not sure what we do with that outside of testosterone replacement therapy, which I do not think you need based on your total levels." Bruce asked if there was anything nutritional that addressed SHBG. His doctor said, "Not that I am aware of." This is becoming a familiar pattern in these stories, and I tell it not to shame doctors but to illustrate exactly the kind of gap that this channel exists to fill. Bruce found boron on his own, through the same literature Wayne found. He started the same protocol, 10 milligrams of calcium fructoborate daily. At 8 weeks, his free testosterone had risen from 7.1 to 10.3. His SHBG had dropped from 59 to 44, and he began to see the body composition changes that had eluded him for years. Not dramatic, not rapid, but his muscle definition beginning to return, his waistline beginning to contract slightly, his physical capability in the workshop feeling restored. He told me he had not realized how much of his sense of himself as a capable, physical man was connected to his hormonal status until that status began to improve and he felt himself come back. The protocol is simple. 10 milligrams of boron daily, taken with food. Calcium fructoborate is the preferred form. It is available at most health food stores and online, typically in 3 milligram capsules, so you would take 3 capsules with a meal. The cost is approximately $12 to $15 per month. Results in terms of subjective energy and motivation typically begin at 4 to 6 weeks. Blood work changes are typically measurable at 6 to 8 weeks. There are no significant safety concerns at 10 milligrams per day for most men. The tolerable upper intake level established by the Institute of Medicine is 20 milligrams per day. 10 milligrams is comfortably below that. Boron is not known to interact significantly with any common medications. As always, mentioning it to your doctor is sensible, particularly if you are going to track blood work changes. One thing I want to add. Boron works best as part of a broader nutritional approach to testosterone support. The eggs and pumpkin seeds and nuts from the previous 2 videos, the vitamin D that I have mentioned repeatedly, adequate zinc, adequate magnesium. Boron is not a standalone solution. It is the piece that addresses the SHBG binding problem specifically. Combined with the other elements, the cumulative effect on free testosterone can be substantial without any pharmaceutical intervention. Normal aging is a phrase that gets used to close conversations that deserve to stay open. Your hormonal status after 60 is not something to accept passively. It is something to understand, measure correctly, and address intelligently. The information exists, the tools exist, and they are not expensive, not dangerous, and not dependent on a doctor who has time to read the research. If this video helped you, please hit like and subscribe. Leave your age and city in the comments. I read every one. And if a doctor has ever told you that how you feel is just normal aging and sent you home without answers, share this video, because the answer was out there. It was just in a journal that nobody brought to the appointment. Thank you for watching. See you in the next one.